way of being able to bring a community together, bring people together and knowledge together to be able to share. And that's the main thing that I really want to do with Fight Creative.
The Fight Creative Podcast, hosted by Seb Muirhead and Chan Griffin. Welcome to the Fight Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Seb Muirhead, and today we are joined by action movie star and actor Bryan Larkin. Some of his credits, his many credits, include London Has Fallen, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves, Vikings, and most recently Operation Hadal. Thank you very much for joining us today, Bryan.
Thanks for having me, Seb. It's great to meet you.
Oh, and great to meet you as well. Now, you've just returned from, is it Hong Kong?
Yeah, I was in Hong Kong there for about 2 weeks, and also mainland China. I was there for the Chinese premiere of Hadal.
Operation Hadal, yeah, beautiful. You good now? You over the jet lag? You must travel a fair whack. You're all over the place by the looks of your credits, anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of been the way that my career's gone. I guess the past 4 or 5 years, I've spent more time traveling for work than the work that I've got in the UK, particularly Southeast Asia, mainland China, and I guess quite recently as well, South Korea.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so the jet lag's still a little bit there, so bear with me. I might be on a slight delay.
Don't worry about that. I was going to ask as well, how do you manage traveling so much for work? I'm a real homebody. I love my base, my solid base, but with all of those different projects all over the place, how do you manage? I mean, firstly yourself, but then manage turning up and doing 12 hours on set and maybe somewhere that you can't even speak the language.
Yeah, it's really just, you have to sort of slowly get accustomed to it, to be honest with you. The jet lag's not so much of a problem. Normally you get a little bit of downtime before you start a project. Although that's not exclusive to China. They just like to get you straight off the plane and straight on set. We can cover that. I think the hardest thing, Seb, really for me is, I guess, getting back into a routine.
Yep.
Because as actors and as stunt actors or action actors, your training and your diet and your sleep are really what the fundamentals of your job.
The make and break of you, like literally sometimes as well.
Yeah, so it's just a case of whenever you get grounded, is to try and sort of find a place where you can, find a good gym that has the facilities that you need, and also to find and it can be quite difficult in Southeast Asia as Westerners when you're going there. There's a wonderful, abundant amount of food and variety, but we like to stick to our principles of our broccoli or chicken and eggs and things like that, and it's not always easy to source depending on where you are in a province or how far you are, so it can be difficult. But the best thing that I learned last year was to make friends with the chefs and all the hotels that you stay at.
That goes for on set as well, for anyone listening. If you can make friends with the catering team, your life will be so much better.
Yeah, it's great. They're always quite curious because they go, so what's a Westerner doing this so far out east? And it's like, oh, I'm making a movie. And then they become, oh, what kind of movie are you making? And then they want to do their best to help you. They say, well, I've got a fridge here, and I could. So they end up sort of like looking after your food for you and sort of keeping your chicken breasts and all your things for you, which is really, really nice. So yeah, it can be a bit of a bumpy road when you get there, but you can even it out.
Yeah, and I suppose it's like with anything, really, isn't it? The more you do it, the more you get used to it, the more you find your own personal little things which really help. And I don't know about yourself, but I love to take my couple little bits with me, even if it's just like a little video game console or something that just makes it feel like home, that you can just relax with for a little bit as well. Right,
yeah. So you don't travel with your kilt then, no?
I usually wear that on the plane. That'll get me upgraded to first class every now and again, and occasionally kicked off a flight.
Right. Right, that's crazy.
Do you enjoy the Scottish charm abroad gets you far as well, I've found.
Yeah, it can do. And I think one of the things that I've been beaten up by my friends for this is I've kind of had to change my accent a little bit. And I do it sort of subconsciously because you want to be understood.
Yeah.
You don't want to go in there as if you're from Glasgow where it's hashtag 150 letters and there's the sentence.
Yeah.
So it can take a little bit of adjusting, but they do like the Scottish charm. They know that we're a nation of drinkers, although not all of us to the same degree.
Yep.
So yeah, it can be quite fun. Speaking Mandarin with a Chinese accent is it's now it's a little bit tricky,
That's
but yeah, it's good fun.
fair enough. And you pretty well immersed in a lot of the languages for the films that you're filming as well. Are you fluent with Mandarin or can get by?
Yeah, I can get by, enough to introduce myself and understand, ask where the bathroom is, how are you
Yep.
doing, nice to meet you, left or right, and to say my name and to ask their name. I can't go deep into it,
Yep.
really, and a little bit of Korean as well. I mean, I can read Korean, so, better than most beginners, so I can read it, but do I understand all of it? That's another question.
Fair
But I know
enough.
a little bit of Korean,
That's
a
great.
little
Is
bit
that
of Korean.
out of necessity as well? Is that something that you've picked up whilst you're
Yeah.
there, or is it something that you're trying to make a conscious choice of when you are going over to these different countries to film, to at least get that baseline of asking where the bathroom is or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, in a lot of these projects, you are going to have a translator assistant
Yeah.
because they don't assume that you can speak the language. But I think out of respect and also for your own confidence, it's nice to be able to say, ni hao, hangao, sheng ni, wo de zhongwan bo hao. Things like, hello, my name is Brian, nice to meet you.
Oh,
My Chinese is not very good. Um, or 한국어 조금 할 수 있어요. I speak a little bit of Korean, so they're like, oh, you speak Korean. So that's the funny thing when you're in other countries, particularly sort of China and South Korea, where they're like, you say one word, you say ni hao, or you
yep.
say annyeonghaseyo. They go, oh wow, you can speak. No, I can just speak one word,
Yeah.
one sentence.
But that's
But it's yeah.
I was going to say it's nice as well because a lot of the time traveling and film projects, ironically, can be very lonely places. So actually having that little bit of a bridge to just introduce yourself to people sometimes makes the world a difference.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, but we will jump into some of the pre-prepared questions that we have for you now as well, Brian. And we're going to definitely come back to working in the East versus West a little bit later on. I was kind of wanting to start off with getting maybe a little bit of your background as far as acting, and then a little bit more towards how you've slipped into the action side of things as well. So with the kind of characters we see you portraying a lot just now, it's your big strong man. You got your what are they called, the characters of authority. You've got your SAS soldiers, you've got your Vikings, these people that are kind of looked up upon, if not feared. Was that something you consciously went for, or did you find that was mostly what you were getting put up for, or was it anything you wanted to pursue?
It's an interesting question. I think you have your appearance, right?
Yeah.
Most people cast based on appearance. They're not cast based on, your latitude in terms of like how emotional you can be or how vulnerable you can be. But like so many actors, I've never really had the luxury of being able to choose my roles.
Yeah.
They kind of choose you, and you either accept that role or you don't work.
Yeah.
But in terms of doing action films, like you say, these kind of sort of foreboding characters or demonstrative, like captains, admirals, police chiefs, and things like that. I never thought I'd end up being an actor, first of all, and I also never thought that I'd end up doing these kind of movies.
Yeah. So it's just something that's come along then, is it? That you've found yourself just naturally being put up for agents or word of mouth?
Yeah, and as I say, with the appearance is one thing, but I guess as at a young age, I was inspired by like Bruce Lee, and I did karate when I was younger. I moved into doing some boxing, and I also have a bit of a grounding in dance as well. So I had a kind of movement and a sort of grounding in performing. Although I was a very shy kid in school, when I went into junior bodybuilding, it gave me a bit more confidence. So it was kind of that whole thing where, there wasn't any guidance towards being an actor or what kind of actor you could be. These roles pretty much sort of found me. And how I found myself getting into action films was I was 10 years into my career before I did my first action role.
No way.
10 years I was mostly doing dramas, playing like cops or criminals or so these types of things. And I'd actually made a short film. It went to the Sundance Film Festival, and about 3 or 4 years later, I got a call from one of the producers saying, we're working with a director. It's an action film. Do you want to give it a go? And I said, I've never done an action film. Oh, but you look like a guy who could beat people up or like be quite menacing. I was like,
is that look working for you? Yep.
Is that how I come across? Is that just, how my appearance and things? But anyway, I went up to Canada, and there wasn't, in terms of action, Seb, it was more kind of gunplay.
Yep.
Not so much hand to hand, and it was really just playing a bank robber, a bunch of bank robbers kind of laying low in the forest as they're trying to get their out. So after that, it was just one action movie after another. I thought, well, if you can pull off that kind of action grimace,
yep. No, you do it well, mate.
Yeah, oh, thanks very much. And then it was after that, it was Outpost, London Has Fallen, and then more action movies came, and then moving into sort of close quarter combat stuff.
Yeah,
as well, a little bit.
And is that something that you trained for before you found yourself on any of the movie sets, or is it you were offered the roles and then it comes with the entire plethora of the producers put you in touch with the right people, you get on board with the stunt team, you get all the training there?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much half and half for me. I've been fortunate that I've been in the position where most of the big movies that I've done, there's always been like, I guess, a sort of preliminary training, as it were, where you'll do a boot camp for a week where you'll learn weapons, whether it's staff, knife, or it's guns, gunplay, movement, these kind of things. When I did, I guess it was my second action film, Outpost, Rise of the Spetsnaz. I don't know if anybody ever seen it. It was a kind of B-movie subgenre zombie Nazi film.
Yeah.
There was Systema. It was the Russian martial arts Systema.
Yep.
So we
very
did
popular.
three weeks of that. Yeah. So we did 2 or 3 weeks of that. Did 2 or 3 weeks of that. And I guess because I had a grounding in martial arts when I was a kid, karate, 3 or 4 years, and then boxing. I from a very young age, I had that kind of, the movement was instinctive. When you start young and then these skills reawaken.
Yep. I also think a massive help as well is like what you said, is that dance background. You'd be surprised how many stunt performers you do find that have that dance background, because it's the picking up the choreography. It's just making things look good as well. Did you find that helped at all, or was that, it's cooler to say that martial arts helped?
No, I think it's exactly like you say, dance, gymnastics.
Yeah, gymnastics.
I was never a gymnast, but there's something about learning a skill where you're using your whole body and learning about balance and spatial awareness that sort of drifts into your subconscious the older you get. So you learn these things from a very young age. I guess that's why they train ninjas in Japan, from a very young age. So the instinct is there.
Yeah, it's second nature.
I guess for movement. And then there's a technical side with the filming thing as well. It's not just a case of doing the fights, moving, because you're not hitting with full force. You have to sell it. So there's more of a sort of performance, and not acrobatic, but there's a what's the word I'm looking for? There's a cadence.
Yeah.
There's a rhythm. And that's where dance can help you in rhythm. And if you can find that with your co-performers, it really does help. So having those backgrounds is really good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then having to learn some of the things for these movies as well, when you are tired or when you put your body through the ringer already before you turn up. One of your movies you had to pack on, was it 40 pounds to play one of the characters? So carrying yourself, I know the difference from just like 5 kilos up or down. Your body feels different and the way you move feels different. How did you work around, firstly being so much heavier, or actually having to get to that weight as well for the roles? Did you find that you had to come at a different approach, or just knuckle down and not enjoy yourself as much?
Well, fortunately, I had 4 months to do that.
Oh, okay.
4 or 5 months. It was 4 or 5 months. There's no way. Gaining 40 pounds, and it wasn't all muscle, because I was a bodybuilder when I was younger.
Yep.
I started training when I was about 15, 16 years old, sort of mid-high school, and I'd built myself up to quite a size by the time I was like 21, 22. So muscle memory kicked in.
Nice.
I'd always done weights and things like that, but I had 4.5 months from being, I guess, in quite athletic shape to quite a sort of like rounded, kind of like a blunt instrument kind of shape, which was, I guess, the demands for Dolokhov, this Russian soldier in an outpost. So it was just upping the calories and starting to lift weights, heavier weights again. And it slowly, and I think it was about 35 to 38 pounds, because I did a diary of my weight increase. Of course, it does affect your movement.
Yep.
It does affect your agility, but you certainly feel it. There's no doubt about it, whether it's muscle or there's some fat in there. But just being bigger, it does actually affect your movement. Yeah.
And the way you carry yourself as well. You always notice that with a little bit of the weight that we have to put on or occasionally lose as well. That helps influence the character. Which, did you find that was really helpful with that character?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I guess from an actor's point of view, you're always trying to find a way in which you can, where it's organic, where it feels natural, and whether it's in the walk, or whether it's in the dialogue or in something, and being that size with the uniform on, and the big metal, the big steel toe cap boots, it kind of helps with the swagger.
Yeah.
So it did help in many ways, sort of help, I guess you lean into that kind of bullishness. It does.
Yeah,
there's many things. But,
yeah. I've always enjoyed, as far as acting goes, anything that means you don't have to act quite as much. It's not a conscious choice. It's just kind of, it's in you now, and that's one less thing to worry about on camera. So those kind of things I found really do help. And then with the change in body as well, did you have a problem dropping the weight again, or when you were that size, like injuries do come a little bit more easily, I would say, or frequently?
Let me think. That I did get injured on that film, but it wasn't. It was more so because the set it was like I had to do a stunt where it was running along at sort of like full speed, and then there was a decline, and I'd sort of dive slide down it.
Oh yeah.
And there was a branch like emerged from the ground. They hadn't properly cleared the set, and my inside of my foot caught it, and it went in I sort of punctured my meniscus a little bit, which was kind of sore. I mean, it didn't tear it, but it was a bit of a problem for a while. That was the only injury I had, but dropping the weight, I mean, from my bodybuilding days and the mentors that I had, Mr. Scotland's and things like that, I always had a really good idea of how to go about the most effective way of losing weight, calorie deficit, when are the best times in your day to train, what are the best foods to eat while you're trying to lose weight, to keep the variety in there. So it maybe took me about 4 or 5 months, 3 months to get back down again, I would say. 3 months.
Yeah,
to lose that 30 or 40 pounds.
That's great. And then sort of jumping back a little bit there to the injury, they do happen on set fairly regularly. I would say it depends on your role on set, obviously, and it depends what your character's doing on camera. Have you found yourself injured much, either on set or sort of off camera as well? And then when you are injured, how do you manage yourself? I think that's the biggest problem we find with, especially a lot of stunt performers, is, okay, I'm injured, I'm out for 3 months. Well, I've just lost my entire life. Like, it's a very hard thing to deal with personally. If there's anything that you found that's really helpful for looking after yourself in those points.
That's a question that I would like to ask you.
Yeah, is
actually. Yeah, it's one of those that I had on list for you. Fortunately, I've not really been injured very, very much, other than a few dings here and there.
Yeah.
I've been in the fortunate position where if I've had a double, they're the ones that have, bear the brunt of most of the hard, heavy lifting, as it were.
Yep.
I've not had any real, debilitating injuries over the years. There's been a couple of little knees or an ankle. As I say, I was treated for the meniscus sort of injury a while back, but I've, I guess the best, the sort of, what have I thought is, I guess, there's always really good physios on these productions.
Yep.
A daily bi-daily massage as well. And also, I guess, to manage yourself during injuries, I guess in a physical way, it's just rest as much as possible. And And I'm not a doctor, but
Yep.
I had a little bit of a problem with my lower back at one point. I think it's just degenerative, because I used to lift heavy weights and there's a bit of spinal compression there.
Yeah, it gets the
And
best of us.
I had a trapped nerve, and I really couldn't bear weight on my left leg for about 2 months.
Wow.
And Hadal was coming up. Now, that's just something I was purely doing myself. And Hadal was coming up, and I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this movie if I can't perform at my best ability. Fortunately, I was able to do it, but traction exercises were really, really traction. The way that you're just holding and you're resisting against, like if you've in the inside of your knee. Yeah, that kind of thing. Where you've got like a foam roller in between your knees and you're pushing in as hard as you can. And, the hip joints, the lower back, the shoulders. It's not just be doing a repetitive motion, but traction has helped me as well.
Wow.
That was really good, and obviously staying flexible on your downtime. If
you
can.
Have no idea how many people have reached that. And it's such an overlooked component. And I'll be the first to say I'm terrible for stretching myself, but flexibility, especially when you start getting a little bit deeper into your performance career and maybe life as well, flexibility seems to be the one that comes up the most.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I learned was done religiously on Hadal. The stunt teams over there, of which we can get into, I was so impressed. It was like a commune of athletes, like your good self over there. Stuntmen, multidisciplinary teams, everything from close quarter combat, acrobatics. I mean, these guys, some of them were doing backflips, spiral kicks. The variety of the skills of the stunt teams on that movie, that Tim Wong and Brett Chan were, commanding, were just incredible. But what they did religiously every morning was they would get together as a group on the mat, and they would be led by a different either a coordinator or another stunt man or woman every morning, and they would take turns of warming each other up. So they would share their stretching techniques or their these kind of things, which was amazing to watch.
That's great. I love the sharing as well in those kind of situations, because everybody comes from a different background, and like what you said as well, there's always lots of different disciplines as well. So your close quarter combat guys probably aren't the same as your gymnasts or anything like that. So having that wealth of sharing and then people on board to actually take that as well, that's some of my favorite stuff to see as well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the sharing of knowledge and information, and to do it willingly and freely, is so inspiring. It's just like a family, A lot of these guys have worked together before, some of them haven't, but they're from all over the globe, So there's a big cultural mix. There's a bit, but they're all just there to share and support each other, and it's just, it's really great.
Yeah, that's fantastic to see. And on a very slight side note with that as well, walking into a situation where you are essentially going into a training room full of people who have spent their entire lives pretending to be blown up or killed, and these stunt performers have a bit of an air about them, whether they want it or not, or whether they deserve it or not as well, to be honest with you. Do you find that you're ever nervous heading into work with a stunt team, or how have you ever managed? Because even working with just some of the actors you've worked with as well, how do you find yourself managing your nerves? Maybe even back when you were a little bit fresher in the career, or even now? Because I'll be honest, I still get nervous some days on set. The big gigs or the big stunts or the big names, they still get a little bit of a butterfly in my stomach.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to deny it. I think that, in the early days of like being an actor, and starting to work professionally and getting your time on set, and there's a well-kent face, as we call them in Scotland, or a very recognisable bonnet. Being around the film set, you know their names, you know their faces, and it's like it can be a little bit daunting. But I think it helps to read the room, and that's something that comes with the experience. It's just like if there's a vibe or there's a presence or there's a famous person, it's just to see what kind of energy that they meet you with, and just meet them with that same energy.
Okay.
Treat them the same way that they treat you, and to not be sycophantic, because you're not really going there to learn. You're going there to do a job.
On
And
set, especially, yeah.
yeah, and just, let them know that you're there to support them, the best way that you can, and just to, make them look good.
Yeah.
There are some that I've come across, very few, who do like to feel that sense of self-importance, that they're number one on the call sheet. And, that this is the first time they've been number one on the call sheet in their life or for a long time. And they like you to treat them like that. And that's fine, but I've never really been subservient around celebrity or famous people.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've always worked with people who have been, welcoming. Like, for example, Donnie Yen, who chose me for the role in Chasing the Dragon, was great. I think the first thing that happened was, after he chose me for the role and I went out to Hong Kong, I was more nervous because I hadn't read a script.
Yeah.
Not in meeting Donnie. When I was nervous in meeting Donnie a little bit, I was like, well, what's he going to be like? Is he going to like me? But I thought, I'm not there to be liked. I'm there to do a job. And he's chosen me for that job based on an audition. All I need to do is just do what he thinks I can do. So the first, I asked him 2 questions. I says, listen, I'm so grateful to be here, but I've got a couple of questions. And he says, ask me. And I says, well, the first thing is, what's the best way that I can represent this character in the way that you see it? Is there something that you can give me that I can lean into in my performance that might help us shine a little bit more in our scenes together? And he kind of like, oh, that's a great question. And then I came with a suggestion. I says, can I make a suggestion? He's like, yeah, because there was no script.
Yeah.
I was getting Google translated like synopsis of the scene, and I had to make the dialogue up myself. And this was something that I was aware of going into the project, because I was told by the casting and the producers, and I was saying, like, you probably won't get much of a script. So we're relying on you to obviously help us build, the scene and improvise a little bit. And I was like, okay.
Like such a good opportunity as well. At the same time, whilst it would be terrifying. to walk into, but
yeah,
I don't hate the sound of that. I'm going to be honest with you.
So I was like, the way it says, my read on this character, Seb, is he strikes me as someone who's a bit like a petulant child in a position of power. So I'd like to sort of lean into that petulance a little bit, and also play him a little bit more bombastic. Like when he does get his own way, he's like the kid in the candy, the chubby kid in the candy store, but then he's deflated, and he says, in an adult way, and he says, that's fantastic. I'd like to see that. But try to keep him human. And I'm like, great. So having had that conversation with Donnie, this was, and he sort of gave me a bit of approval there. I says, if there's something along the way that you think doesn't sound right, and he says, no, I'm so glad you're here. I'm really grateful for that. Then I could relax. Yeah. Then he was a colleague,
Yeah.
And it was like when I worked with Butler, Jared Butler on London Has Fallen, we all, I was going to be nervous meeting him. But fortunately, there's 2 things about that. It was like the first biggest star, huge star that I'd actually ever worked with, or a bigger name than the local names or TV names and things. He was a movie star. If there are any movie stars left now, I had a personal connection to him through a neighbour. And I'll not give you this. It's quite an interesting story, actually. It's a lovely story, but
you're welcome to tell.
Do you want to hear it?
It also makes you can always sound like it's tiny as well. That you're just Jerry's mates with my neighbour. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll tell you as quickly as I can. So I was staying in a flat in Glasgow, and struggling actor as I was, and there was a couple that lived next door to me, and they had 2 British bulldogs, and they said, "Oh, we're leaving. It was nice to be your neighbour," and then they left. And 2 weeks later, this, I want to say elderly lady, she was in her early 60s, so she's still pretty young. she moved in with her dog, or maybe she had a cat, and she had a bit of a difficulty walking. And I was like helping her bring her bags in, and she's like, "I'm your neighbour, Brian. There's also Robbie and Ian next door, and if you ever need anything, let us know, and we'll help you out." So that's very nice. She says, "So what do you do, Brian?" I says, "Well, I'm a struggling actor." And she says, "Oh, I know an actor." I was like, "Oh, do you?" And she says, "Yes, you might have heard of him. His name's Gerard Butler." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you know Gerard Butler?" She says, "Yeah, I knew Jerry. He was a wee boy." And I was like, "Okay, fair enough." So she says, "If you ever meet Jerry,
Oh yeah.
tell him that his Auntie Marjorie, or was it Auntie Marjorie, was that her name? Said hi." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'm going to meet Jerry." No idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, 2 months later, I get an audition for London Has Fallen, and I go down to, initially it was a self-tape. So they make you do a self-tape.
Yeah.
It's synonymous now with every casting's home casting.
Yeah.
Followed up by a callback down at the Bond Studios.
Oh, great.
Down at down there
In London.
and and I went in and auditioned for Babak Najafi, and waited around 2 or 3 weeks later, and eventually I got the call saying, "You've got the part." And I thought, "You're kidding me."
Yeah.
No way. So first of all, the shock of getting the part, and also, hold on a minute here, Gerard Butler, I'm going to get to meet Gerard Butler. A month ago, I'm talking to this lady who said she knew him. So anyway, forward to the time, we're on the set. Very first time I meet him, they're shooting the helicopter scene in the green screen. And Jerry jumps down from the helicopter and he comes across, and he kind of gave me a kind of like one of them,
Yeah.
all right. And I was like, all right, big man. He says, "Where are you from?" I says, "East Kilbride." "You're a Paisley boy, aren't you?" And he says, "Yeah." And he says, "Don't worry, I'll not hold that against you." And I was like, right, okay. So we had a little bit of a chat. But the night we were actually in work together, because all my scenes were at night, there was a scene where he'd just like killed the guys who were trying to kill the president. Aaron Eckhart had got out the car and he'd been dragged away. And Jerry sort of comes around and the SAS march in, and Jerry's stabbing this gangster, terrorist character. And I'm supposed to pull him off him. And just before we filmed that scene, they'd filmed the scene where the car getting run over, it sort of turns upside down and there's glass everywhere and there's all blood everywhere. And Jerry had actually got some sugar glass in his eye during that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think it was quite serious at one point. And, it was just like he just needed a bit of time, and everyone was sort of faffing around him, and he says, "I'm okay." And he just pouring water into his eye, and his eye was like bloodshot.
Yeah, right.
And he wasn't complaining or anything. And it looked like they were going to have to sort of call it a day because he couldn't open his eye properly. Anyway, maybe at 10 or 20 minutes later, he's on his own, and I sort of catch his eye across the set, and I was like, and he just goes like this. And I go over to him and I say, what's the problem? What's the deal? And he was genuinely quite concerned that he was worried because this was the sequel to the first film.
Yep.
And he was investing his own money in this film. And he was just like, it's really tough, this producing stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really worried that this movie's not going to be as successful as the first film. And then every day I'm producing, but I'm acting, and now I'm all these problems. And I'm just like, I says, well, your Auntie Marjorie would be proud of you. I hear that I don't have a strawberry mivvy for you. And he's like, he says, what? And I was like that. I says, your auntie is like that. Like, she was my neighbour. And he's like, what? Where are you from again? I says, East Kilbride. Well, she lives in Glasgow. I says, yeah. She was my neighbour for like 2 months. And she ever said if I ever met you, then I was to say, she said hi. And all of a sudden he sort of kicked back and he was like that. What's your story then? How did you end up here? And I says, well, a different path to you, obviously. But we just started sort of like shooting the breeze, and then we went into the scene. And I says, do you want? He says, run the lines, Brian. It's Brian, isn't it? I says, yeah, run the lines. We ran the lines, and I was improvising. Now, there's a point to this whole thing. Yep. I was adding extra bits during his pauses. And he says, that's not in the script. I says, no. He says, but it's good. What did you say again? I says, he's done, he's effing done. Back off, take it easy. And he says, that's good. Play that. If you can do that, and do it again. But then he's forgotten about the problem with his eye, the sugar glass.
Yep.
And he just built a rapport. And then it was like, he says, you're having fun. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I says, yeah. He says, don't give it too much, but everything you just did, we'll do that when we come to shoot it. And then we blasted through the scene, like 1 or 2 takes. We're done in half an hour. Then went on to the next scene. And then from that moment on, for the rest of the film, he was looking out for me on that film. It was like, are you coming round? You swinging round on a medium on Bry? Are you getting coverage on Bry? Yeah, okay. He's doing some good stuff here. Run the lines. He was so into it.
That's fantastic.
And it just because I'd had a connection to him. But it was, anyway, my whole sort of point to that was that, sometimes you can just, have a connection with a personal connection, but it's really about just humility. It could have been that he might have just backed off and said, don't talk to me. But he was just, and I said, look, I'm just here to do this best job I can. I'm here to support you, and I'm just grateful I'm here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And a lot of the time as well, I think it's just treating people like that as human as well, rather than they get fawned over so much as well. And certain people certainly, I mean, certain people like being fawned over, but certain people do like just, you're not asking them like, oh, so what agent are you with, or any insane questions like that. So yeah, just having that
very rarely
humanity.
And the thing is, Seb, as well, I'm a bit of OCD when it comes to my prep. We can get into this another time, but basically I like to know at least my lines inside out, back to front, sideways, and have 3 or 4 different ways of playing it, that if I don't get any direction from the director, I'm reaching up my sleeve for that little inflection or that little note that I made on my script. Now, you've got to be prepared to abandon all these things when you get on set, but if you're bulletproof and you're at least in your line learning and you're free within your body, that you don't have to worry about getting that set freeze, brain freeze that you get when I'm working with Morgan Freeman. He's standing there, and what's my line again? Yeah, that I've already gone through the whole process in my bedroom. I've set the camera up. I've read it with another actor. I've filmed it, and I've watched it back, and I've done that so many times that by the time I get to the set, it's just going through the process of seeing how the director wants it, what happens on the day. But being so prepared that it's almost like I'm not even thinking about the lines. The lines are the last thing I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about what's happening right now, eye to eye with the other actor.
I think that's massive as well. Yeah, getting all your mistakes out of the way at home, so you're not doing them on camera. And there's something to be said for. I hate learning lines as well. I mean, I don't know anyone that likes it, but having them not even factor into your performance. Like they're just ingrained in you that's massive. That's a really good bit of what's the word I'm looking for here?
A tidbit.
Advice. There we go. A wee tidbit. We'll start wrapping this up now as well, Bryan. I really do thank you for taking all the time here. I was just wondering if you could finish off possibly just giving possibly a little rundown just in the differences between working East and West productions, because I know that you probably more than a lot of people would have sort of the most experience with, like, even where you're just saying there your London Has Fallen comparatively to Operation Hadal. I'd imagine both incredibly different styles of shooting, but maybe on paper they are similar films.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the main differences I noticed particularly in China is very different to South Korea, but in China they don't rehearse.
Yeah.
You're given a script pretty much either the night before or in most cases you get it just before you go onto set. They're rewriting as you go onto the set, so it can be incredibly nerve-wracking. So they rely heavily on improvisation or paraphrasing to the point. They shoot very, very quickly. They figure it out as they're shooting. So they'll get you in the seat, they'll get you in the makeup, costume, and you're on the set, and then you'll have a minute or so with the other actor. You don't have the luxury of if you've done any preliminary line running, you've done it before you've got to the set.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But so that's very, very, and also they take a lot more risks in terms of action and things. In my experience in witnessing it, it was very tough on Hadal because they would be constantly changing the choreography. Like you would do a previs, you would get, like Brett and the guys would spend 2 or 3 days on a sequence, but then the script would change, and then they have to reorder the action.
Oh wow!
And
Yeah.
when you're on set, I mean, it was so difficult because it's like they're trying to remember 18 to 20 strike combos within 3 minutes.
Yeah.
We're figuring it out as we're shooting it. And I thought, well, for a movie this big with so much money being spent, surely there would be like, you make your choices, you do your rehearsal, do your previs, get it up to speed, get it approved by the director,
Yep.
Health and safety checks, and then the acting beats throughout the action are all orchestrated. Then you would shoot it, and that would take a long period of time. But not there. It was just you're figuring it out as you're doing it. In the UK, it's very different.
No, like the way you were just saying there as
Yeah.
well, where it needs to be ran through quite a lot of different channels as well. It needs to go by the producer to make sure that they can afford it, the director to give the green light as well, and then the actors need to see it too to see if, like, I don't think my character would do this, but that sounds stressful, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, if you can work in China, you can work anywhere, pretty much.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it looks incredible. You know, they're shooting multi-camera on these things. Other differences, South Korea, it's almost like a religion working in film and television. There's so much respect, there's so much detail.
Oh, wow.
I think before any other country in the world, I mean, everybody had live preview on their phones. They've got the fastest internet in the world in South Korea. I don't know if you know that, but
I didn't know.
So their bandwidth is super fast. So everyone's got their phone with A camera, B camera, C camera, and they're maybe a mile away or half a mile away in the makeup truck.
Wow.
And they're watching playback. You know, they're able to go into the file server and watch takes from like 10 minutes ago. It's so meticulous. And I guess like the actors work incredibly, all the crew work incredibly hard. In many cases, they're overworked. It's so dedicated. There's no sort of small talk going on. There's none of that. I guess because of the strict and the very sort of as we know about South Korea, image is everything, and I guess reputation is everything. So there's none of that. There's no kind of bitchiness, as it were, on set. Everyone's very well behaved.
That's nice.
Which can be quite different.
Yeah,
it's lovely. It's almost like a religion. Entertainment and performance is just like a religion over there.
I had
so
no
much
idea.
respect for. I mean, I've always been seen as the kind of, you know, the Scottish actor that's just known for being like the cop or the criminal or the corrupt dude here and there. And I've always tried to, in the work I do, try to manifest something a bit more three-dimensional.
Yep.
Over there, I'm seen as a revered and multi-experienced actor. I'm not just the Scottish guy. So there's more opportunities that they say, well, you could play the lawyer, you could play the politician, you could play this negotiator character, you could play, you know, this disabled character. They see, because if you're good at one thing over there, they think you're good at everything. Like if you really shine, you can just do this then. Where it's very typecast over here, you know, and
it's almost the polar opposite. You are just seen as that cop or that criminal forever, essentially.
And I guess a lot of it plays into the whole diversity thing, because for Southeast Asian actors, and from my observation, are getting so many more opportunities here now as before they didn't. Where it was just, well, they're just Asian.
Yeah.
But you can see the difference between South Korean, Chinese, Taiwanese, Singaporean actors in terms of and Japanese actors in terms of the style that they bring as well to the performance. That if you don't spend a lot of time in Southeast Asia, you wouldn't know. But there's a different quality to actors of different countries and nations as well, which I find fascinating.
I love
but
being
that's
able
another
to see that. Yeah, even in the acting or in the stunt world as well, to be honest with you. The style of what they bring from each different stunt team from a lot of the different Southeast Asian countries is fascinating as well, to be honest with you. But yeah, I will end that there. I won't keep you any longer, Bryan. Thank you very much again for joining us. If I can make a suggestion as well to everyone listening, please check out the Dead End Shorts trilogy as well, made by our very own Bryan Larkin here as well. It is on his webpage, which will be linked in the show notes. But Bryan, where can people find you? What do you have coming up?
I've got a website. It's www.bryanlarkin.actor, Bryan with a Y. I'm also on Instagram, and I've just joined Red Note as well for China. I have Hadal is released in the US, selected release, and I think 50 to 100 cinemas. Well Go USA are releasing it in the US, 28th February.
Oh, fantastic.
And also, I've got 2 other movies coming out this year. I don't know the dates, but they're probably the best work that I've ever done as an actor. One is Jailbroken, which the whole film is entirely set in one prison cell.
Oh, wow.
About this prisoner who's about to be released, and his family get kidnapped on the outside, so he's got to do everything he can and work against police corruption and politics to try and save his family from within the confines of a prison cell. So it's like Phone Booth meets Taken. Very cool.
Great.
I play the lead in that, and also I have another really cool sort of period action film coming out, also playing the lead. It's called Simon's Reach, about a family man, DEA agent who basically gets found out that he's working undercover among these drug dealers. And then a gunfight happens, and he's the sole survivor. So it's basically just like 127 hours.
Yeah.
That movie. So it's basically he's surrounded by drugs and money, and he has to survive, and nobody's coming to save him.
Both of them sound outstanding, I'll be honest with you. And the best place to keep up to date with those releases will be on your Instagram or your website as well. But thank you so much again, Bryan.
Thanks, Ed. It was great to meet you, and hopefully I'll see you back in the motherland soon with your kilt on.
Maybe I'll be flying over in it if I do anyway.
All right, have a great one.
You
Thanks
too.
for your time.